Welcome to Purdue Crop Chat, a regular podcast from Hoosier Ag Today and the Purdue University Extension Service, featuring Purdue Extension soybean specialist Dr. Shaun Casteel and Extension corn specialist Dr. Dan Quinn. Now your host for Purdue Crop Chat, Hoosier Ag Today's Eric Pfeiffer.
Hey, thanks for joining us on the Purdue Crop Chat. I'm Eric Pfeiffer. Glad to have you along. Welcome into Hat Studio 3A, and we've got a room full today. We've got all the brain power, the brain trust we could possibly want as it relates. Yeah, Shaun's still trying to find it. We've got everybody here.
No doubt.
Yeah, we've got everybody here. Dan Quinn is here. I still think we need to come up with a better nickname. I think Dan Quinn, Corn Man.
As long as it's better than, Hey You or Pal.
Dan Diva Corn Quinn.
No, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Diva Dan?
Diva Dan.
Diva Dan?
I think we're going back. I think I called you that the first season or two.
Yeah, maybe.
Retro. It's a retro show today.
Retro show today. Okay, perfect. Soybean Shaun Casteel is here, and that just fits perfectly.
It does. It does.
How you doing, Shaun?
I'm doing well, Eric.
And of course, we welcome in. We've got to talk weeds today. Mm-hmm. Weeds, not.
Well,
that's right.
Weeds.
Yeah. Tommy, on how the subject
it's a clear
goes.
distinction.
Yeah.
That's
Tommy,
in Studio 3C.
I thought it was 420, actually.
Tommy Butts is here.
Yeah.
Tommy, welcome. And we do need to clarify, no relation to Harry or Seymour or...
Well, maybe somewhere.
I like to tickle or... None of that.
Holden, Bubble. Got a sister Bubble. No, none of that.
None of that. Okay, perfect. Our producer Greg was wondering, by the way. He was curious if you were any relation. We've got a lot going on here, guys. It's been busy. I mean, it has just flat out been busy across the state of Indiana. We've got USDA numbers as we sit here and talk on Tuesday. USDA just came out with stuff on Monday, and the numbers look fantastic. I mean, my goodness, we are moving right along as we look at Indiana corn in particular. 30%, Dan. 30% complete.
Yeah.
And when you look at the conditions, I have to say that's pretty impressive, especially when given what's happening in northern Indiana, where we're not getting a whole lot done right now.
Yeah, it's almost every year we have this conversation. I always feel bad for northern Indiana. They always just, especially the Fort Wayne area, I don't know what's going on over there. There's just it's just they take the brunt of this weather. But everywhere else has been going 100 miles an hour. You see that in the numbers. I think we're 30% planted. That's what, 20 percentage points above the 5-year average. I mean, that tells you all you need to know where everything's at. A lot of corn up, right? Drove by a couple fields on the way here that corn was out of the ground and looked good in terms of emergence. So we talked about this last time, the temperatures, it wasn't like we were in the low 60s and putting corn in the ground. It was in the 80s and we were planting. Soil conditions were great. This, since I've been at Purdue, is the furthest ahead our research program has ever been in terms of the planting. We're probably 90% done with trials here in West Lafayette. Planter was working, the soil was in good conditions, it was warm, so we just kept going. And I think a lot of farmers were in that same boat.
I mean, when I took our crop tour, our radio crop tour on Tuesday here, you go south. My buddy J.R. Racner down there in Du Bois County, he's done.
Yep.
And he's done. He's talking about we need to start doing some side corn. You come up a little ways here around Tippecanoe, Montgomery, Fountain County. My buddy Ryan Rippey, he's like, I'm in my last field of corn. The only reason he doesn't have his soybeans done, he's had some technical issues with his soybean planter, moving right along. And then I go chat with my friend Denise Scarborough up in LaPorte County, and we're trying to plan around some ponds. We just can't get moving here, Shaun. But even then, Dan, you talked about emergence, 10% emergence on corn.
Yeah.
Soybeans, we're in even better shape here, Shaun.
which is par for the course.
Par for
right?
the course, absolutely. Yeah, you're just teaching them so well.
I mean, they're chasing us, right? Let's hear the numbers because corn is behind us, right?
8% is the 5-year average pace, and soybeans are at 35% right now. And
Planted, yep.
at this point, from an emergence standpoint, the 5-year average pace is nil. It's not. It doesn't even show up on the board.
Yep.
And emergence as of right now, percent in India.
Yeah. No, it's one of those years that kind of makes you wonder. It's like, what's the rest of the season going to be like? I mean, the idea of 85-degree weather I mean, there's days I felt like that we could actually plan that. The forecast looked great, and so a lot of guys I can probably shut down at 10, 11 o'clock. I don't have to push till midnight or something like that because the next day it still looks great. And so I think we had a lot of fields that got planted in that fashion and looks tremendous. I don't remember a time that we've had April planted beans in a couple weeks. I mean, so we were here 2 weeks ago. I had the T-shirt on to go out planting myself because it was 80-some degrees, flip-flops too, right? And those beans are up and looking great. So when you can start rolling beans already, so it's pretty tremendous. You know, I think we need to knock on wood too, right? We think about in the boat or not. It's like, okay, are we going to get too much rain or we're going to get some freezes coming up? But, you know, you can't look a gift horse in the mouth for too long and say, I can't plant. So.
Well, that's the question here, Shaun. You know, we asked, before, like, was it too soon? Did we go a little too soon here? We did end up with some freezes here recently. Yep. And we are going to talk weeds here in a moment, Tommy, because like we're there now with some of this crop emerged. Like it's time to start talking about this. But do we have some answers on that now that we saw some freezes? Did we go too soon on either corn or soybeans?
Say on the corn front, I haven't had any reports, any calls, any issues, and anywhere there's a little concern. I forget the day where it did dip down.
About a week ago, about Sunday, 30s.
But I think it was just a short period. You know, the other thing, like we always, especially when the corn plant's young, you think corn too with the growing point below the ground. I'm not so much concerned about the air temperature, right? We're more looking at the soil temperature. And soil temperature, you're going to have a little bit more buffer. It's going to take a lot more or cooler temps for a longer period of time to get that soil temp to drop below those degrees. So I think, like Shaun talking about that we have beans up already, we have corns up already. That is a really strong indication that the soil temps are pretty
They're
good.
Doing all right.
So I think that helped quite a bit. So yeah, no issues at all that I've heard of. We had quite a bit of rain, across the state last night. So I think there's a little bit of ponding and flooding in some areas, but what'll be interesting to see is what happens, this week. It's going to cool down a little bit. I do think the cooler temps are going to help with some of that flooding. Maybe help, we always worry about crusting this time of year when you get those driving rains. I think some of those cooler temperatures may help a little bit on that side.
The folks down south were begging for some rain. I mean, my goodness.
They have been. And back to the temperature thing. So about a week ago, I got several text messages and calls on, because we're at that point, not many emerged, and so by and large, I wasn't worried about what was in the ground. So kind of to your point, Dan, but anything that was above the ground, I mean, we're a few hours of 28 degrees on some of the northern areas, but there wasn't much out already. So I think even though the temperatures were there, we didn't have fields in the spot that I was concerned about. Now, if that happened this week where we got a lot more beans up out of the ground, that's when we can have a little bit more of a concern. Growing point is above the ground whenever we emerge on soybeans. And so then it really gets down to some of the nuance. Okay, they're emerged, but the growing point is still encapsulated by the cotyledons. There's kind of like an insulation there. So a lot of times, even if we get 28 degrees, 30 degrees, there's a little bit of a buffer there, a little insulation. If they'd already opened up, I remember a few years ago, May 28th or something like that, we had 20-some degree type, 25, 27 degree nights. And so by that point, no one expects that. And so you can still burn out growing points, but you have auxiliary or axillary buds that can take over. So a concern, but nothing that really manifested a real concern.
All right. Let's talk weeds. Because we're
Let's
there.
get depressed, because all of that was pretty positive, and so now it's my turn to depress everybody. I see how this goes.
Got it. We bring in the comments.
I mean,
we're all about making the agronomist sound the best. We're the true ones, right?
I get it now. Yeah, that makes sense.
If you ever thought of soybean Shaun Casteel and Dan Quinn, you think glass half full. I mean,
Well, 35% right now on the soybean front.
I was going to say, Tommy, you've got about a half hour. We're going to go grab breakfast. You just go talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. We don't want to depress everybody. Just you'll come back and you'll have no listeners. So let's not do that.
Well, let's talk about weeds. Where are we at right now? I mean, obviously we're getting some seed in the ground quick. We're seeing some emergence here happen quickly. Where are we at right now?
So that's where I was going to go on the depression side of things here, right? Is you mentioned fantastic, right? It's fantastic to get the crop in the ground. Guys are getting breaks. It's good to get it up and going. It's also been hard from the weed science side of things because a lot of guys outplanted their sprayers, right? Yeah. And so either residuals didn't get out or it was, just not timely. Crops coming out fast, and all of a sudden now you can't spray some of our pre-residuals and things out there.
20-mile-an-hour winds out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's fine. That's just suggestions, right?
It takes a little additional skill.
It's called swath displacement. You just go upwind, an extra swath.
Oh, it's a Hoosier state. You shoot, you play the wind, right?
Exactly. That's all that is.
Purdue Weed Scientist.
You be a good neighbor. Put the bird down residual for your neighbor.
Yeah, just we're sharing.
Cut that out for me, please. I'm using that in the news tomorrow.
But that's been challenging to get all of those sprays out, right? And then you mentioned, especially down south, essentially the drought that was going on down there. Mm-hmm. Well, all our residuals take water to get activated. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those sat there and didn't get activated and, just probably got activated last night for the first time and may have been sitting there for a couple weeks. Well, in that whole time, we had flushes of weeds coming nonstop. I've had pictures and some of the extension educators tell me that because of the heat we had Waterhemp's already here, right? And I mean, it's not even May yet, and Waterhemp's, especially guys down south, rearing its ugly head. I think we're going to have, at least as of right now, with these fluctuating temps, I think ragweed's going to have another fantastic year, just because it likes some of these cooler temps and things. And
that sounded good, but it's not really.
It's weed science. We got to put a positive spin where we can. Okay.
Weed pressure is going to be great. We're going to have good ratings this year.
So
fantastic year for ragweed.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's going to be challenging from those aspects to get where we're started here, right? We're going to have some early posts that need to go out. We're going to probably have to try and overlap residuals as much as possible, and it may, at the end of the day, add an extra post pass, right? When we plant early, we typically expect an extra post pass. Well, now because of some of the challenges early on, we probably should just automatically be factoring that in, that there'll be an extra post pass.
All right, Chad Fechter next. Economics is the next discussion, is what I'm hearing.
Economics might prop up Tom.
I think so. That's right. And he's the cause for this.
Chad and I talk a lot, and I always appreciate that because, it does make me feel just a little bit better from the weed science side of things. So,
I mean, and really that is the big question right now, Tom, is where's the money for all this coming from? I mean, obviously we, not to get too deep into policy right now, but we've got some, the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program that just went through, and a lot of money came to Indiana farmers through that. We're trying to maybe get some more out there. I know that G.T. Thompson on the House Ag side is trying to get some more, but I mean, it's tight. Mm-hmm. But I think that through all of that, nobody's cutting out their weed program, right? Like that's just something you really can't do, right? I mean,
well, that's why we have to deal with the seed bank, right? And so if you let it go even 1 year, now you've made yourself a mess for the next 5-10 years, right? So we're the ones that you gotta at least try and stay on top of as much as possible. So I like to throw the pathologists and entomologists under the bus. Just take it out of there. We don't need that. No budget. Throw more into the weed science side of things, right? But no, in general, it's going to be tough because of the tight year as it was already. And like I said, the way it's shaping up, it's probably going to take an extra post pass or so. The residuals may not be as activated as much, that kind of thing. Ideally, like I've tried to tell a lot of people, and maybe this will benefit northern Indiana a little bit, right? If we can get a solid residual program out, a lot of the research has shown, and we've done some economics behind it, that if you can get a strong residual program out and get it activated, it will always be the end of the year, right? So kind of the whole season economics of it. And a lot of people will tell me, well, it's too much up front. It costs way too much up front, $20 for a pre or something else. Corn gets even more expensive, right? But it's consistently shown that if you have that strong pre up front, you get it activated, you don't have what I like to call the revenge sprays in August, where we're going to go across the field 3 different times trying to kill waist-high waterhemp, right? So if you think of it from that whole season-long approach, if we can get some more stacked up front and save some of those trips on the back end, we're generally still better off. So that's kind of my message right now, is try and pack some more in up front here. Even though it seems like it's going to be expensive, it'll probably save you on the back end. And then hopefully at the end of the year, it'll shake out that you'll be better off.
So with our southern friends, you made the comment about being dry conditions, not having rains to activate those residuals, those pre's. Is there any concern now that, okay, the crop has been up, it's starting to get side dressed, and now we got activating rains for these herbicides? Is there any concern for crop safety then, or any things that they have to worry about within that realm?
No, I wouldn't say too much so. I mean, if you, like last night with the pounding rains, if the crop was just at the right height and everything, and you had kind of the splash effect, right? There's certain things where you can burn the crop a little bit, but in general, it's one of those things, again, where I say, well, just don't look at it for a few days. We have the heat, it's going to grow right out of it, and you're better off from the weed control standpoint and the little burning that happens. So just kind of go to the lake or something quick, right? For a couple days. Since we're done planning, go to the lake for a couple days.
He's the first one that's come in here and said, don't scout.
Yeah. Well, look at that. Just don't look at the crop. Who cares about those? You're looking for weeds, right? So you're looking at everything else but the crop. But yeah, so the really relatively minor, I would say, from the crop injury perspective.
Probably especially because the crop is growing so well.
Right, exactly.
It's not like you're getting the splash. And I mean, now within the upper part of the state, we're in 60s and splashing. That could be an issue versus south, maybe not growing, is growing a little bit faster.
And again, generally, it's most of the time just cosmetic again, though, right? Even where it is 60s up here and stuff like that, it's still, you just need some heat and it'll grow out of it, right? And it doesn't impact yield at the end of the year. So yeah, I wouldn't be super concerned about the injury side of things. I think the main thing I'd be concerned about is, okay, now we maybe got some residuals activated, but you probably have had some flushes that already came up. Well, now you got to hit it early with an early post and maybe a little bit extra residual or something along those lines. But the plus side is most of our residuals that we spray don't necessarily degrade, right? Even though they've been sitting there, most of them will sit there and wait, which is a plus. So hopefully this rain activated all and didn't wash it out, right? But you should have some good residual now. It's just we got to take care of the flush that came up in the meantime.
So then do you overlap now with this early pass? So again, it's such a nuance that, like, okay, can I just go and do a contact, get it burned down, kill what's there, and then come back with my second post with the residual because I've got that pre that is a little bit delayed?
I would say it probably depends a little bit on where you're at, right? And I haven't looked at the long-term forecast, I'll be honest, so I don't know exactly what the weather is going to try and treat us with.
Even if you looked at the long-term forecast, I'm not sure you would know exactly what the weather is going to do.
But that being said, if I was in southern Indiana, I would probably bet on residuals down because that's where the heat of water hemp has already been coming.
So
and
still have the overlap.
Yeah. Now, if you get to central Indiana, northern Indiana here, where we're still a little cooler, the water hemp hasn't come on full strength yet. And if you just kind of got it out, I think you could wait, right, and do your normal later post overlap and residual kind of thing, right? I think you could play that game a little bit. Sure. But yeah, if I'm in southern Indiana, I'd probably be looking at trying to overlap something. Yeah.
I mean, up there in northern Indiana, I mentioned Denise earlier. We were texting back and forth yesterday, and she's like, she sent me just a picture of her forecast, and she's like, today's the warmest day. So Monday, the day we saw all the rains, like that was the warmest day of the week. They're in the 50s the rest of the week. So it's like they're just struggling up there, man. They're having a hard time just trying to get anything done, get a wheel to turn. So I guess when we talk about weed control and everything else, the big thing people want to know is what works.
Yes, Tommy, what does work?
I don't know. You got an answer for me?
That's what they turn to you for, Tommy.
Oh, that's my job.
That's it.
Oh, that's good to know. 2 years, and I finally found out what my job is. Here we go.
Those big bucks they're feeding you there.
Oh yeah. Right.
That's what it is. So I guess at this point, with some of these things you're talking about, the water hemp, the ragweed, I mean, what types of things are farmers looking at here? What do they need to?
You're really just trying to depress everybody, aren't you?
Absolutely,
Okay.
Part of his job.
So
shovels, right?
So water hemp. Let's go there because that's the main, beast of an animal, right? That everybody's concerned with. Talked a lot over the winter about resistance concerns and stuff we've had, and they just keep growing, right, across different herbicides and everything else. PPO resistance is getting widespread. So things like Flexstar, right, especially post, is starting to be limited in certain spots. The residuals still work tend to work fairly good. So, Valors of the world, Sharpens of the world, we can still get some good residuals out of those from a soil residual applied standpoint, get some good activity. We had some more complaints last year about things like mesotrione or Callisto starting to fail, which was really scary in the corn acres. And from multiple standpoints. One, corn is supposed to be our easy year to control waterhemp compared to soybeans, right? Yep. And now all of a sudden we start losing Callisto. And then the next, big trait on the market is Viconic soybeans, which is spraying mesotrione in beans. And so now we're already starting to lose it a little bit. And now we're spraying it every single year.
Yeah. Seems like we've had a storyline with a herbicide or two or trait over the years.
Yes,
right?
Right. Yeah. So that scares me quite a bit to lose Callisto. Atrazine too in corn. We've getting some complaints on that, and that's starting to go. So that's really scary premise there.
There's not much left.
Yeah, right. Well, and then you start talking the auxins and glufosinate, and we have confirmed resistance in the state to those. Now, I wouldn't say that's as widespread, but definitely popping up, right? So, and then the auxins generally go hand in hand together, which is scary. So we're getting Dicamba back this year, right? But I like to tell people if 2,4-D is failing for you, like legitimately failing, switching to Dicamba is not going to be a solution because they basically go hand in hand at that point. So those are out. Glufosinate's seeing some limited, starting to go out in certain plot spots. So yeah, challenging all around. So what works? No, residuals, right? I mean, it goes back to what we just talked about, like hammering the residuals and then mixing up our posts as much as possible, right? So we were talking beforehand, right? Metribuzin is a big push in soybeans because we don't have a lot of resistance to that. And even though it's in the same mode of action as atrazine, it's a different family. And so a lot of the times resistance doesn't necessarily carry over between the two, which is a pretty big positive. So metribuzin is still a real big advantage for us. Not relying on just one, doing mixes, right? Getting multiple modes of action out there. When we're doing our post, if we're in enlist soybeans, don't just rely on Enlist and don't just rely on Liberty. Do the tank mix. The tank mix trumps everything, right? So mixes, residuals, that's the name of the game where we're at, right? Same in corn, right? It's getting different modes of action out there. Probably relying on a 2-pass system when we're overlapping. All of that's what's going to be most successful. Let's just say that.
So what can you add to it to make sure, like I'm thinking about the escapes, or like, okay, and you got some population that are maybe on the edge, like, okay, should definitely not do half or cut rates, even though economics says, oh, what can we do? It's like, oh, I'm mixing this, so I would do a splash of this, a half rate of that, and this. No, so full rates are still a part of it. Is there anything else? Again, I don't want to keep on adding more dollars to the bill, but if we have escapes like Waterhemp, if you don't catch it, I mean, it grows 2-4 inches a day, whatever it is, something ridiculous. What else is there to put in the mix to make sure you get good burn, good kill on what's there?
That's a great question, and I don't think there is a whole lot of answers there, right? So, I mean, I will put in the plug for AMS in general across the board. That always helps with some of those products, and especially, not necessarily right now, but when we start getting more later in the summer, we get more stressed weeds, it gets drier, things like that. AMS even tends to help there where we have stressed weeds and stuff that we're trying to kill. So that's a good one. Honestly, just making sure to check labels and things for recommended adjuvants, right? Is it recommending an oil? Is it recommending an extra surfactant? Is it recommending something else? And that varies depending on whatever products we're throwing in there and everything else. So I'm always hesitant to give us just an extra here.
More COC or MSOs, right?
The one thing I will throw out there is, there's been a pretty good amount of research across the board on various adjuvant products and things like that. And at the end of the day, a lot of the research has shown there isn't always a major advantage to some of the, what I'll call do-it-all type products, right, that have 3 or 4 different things in there, and those tend to be the more expensive ones. A lot of the times at the end of the day, if the label says, a crop oil, if you get a regular crop oil and you throw it in there, you're going to do about just as well as anything else, right? Okay. If it's a generic surfactant, whatever, as long as you're they're certified and that they're high quality products. So like surfactant, that it's an 80-20 or 90-10, right? Not getting lower percentages, something like that. As long as they're good products from that aspect, the bare bones adjuvants will generally do just as well as a lot of the ones that are sold as the do-it-all type things. So,
Have we covered all the weeds?
Man, I got one.
You got some? Go
for
for it.
because go for it.
See, I've effectively depressed you, haven't I, Eric?
I'm
He is speechless, so that does not happen.
texting my therapist.
Yeah.
Right now. I'm under the table.
I need a
Daily affirmations.
Yeah.
Got any openings later today? So I did want to ask Tommy this question because I know he'll enjoy it.
I don't trust you. This is already going downhill.
What about water pH? I know that was something you, Brian. I had a bunch of calls
Yes.
about it. And it's kind of reared its head in the press and everything like that. Just what are your thoughts on that whole world?
Yeah, so water pH. I'm going to mainly speak from the herbicide standpoint, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to wade in fungicides and insecticides and stuff like that. But so from the herbicide standpoint, can pH affect control? Yes. But it takes a lot, right? You got to get on the real extreme sides of the scale. Can it affect longevity in a tank? That's the number one question we've been getting, right? Is it degrading herbicides and other pesticide products in the tank? Again, yes, but it's not as quick as some people think. And we had a table and an extension publication from back in the day that gets brought up a lot. And that was really more of just like a general example, right? It wasn't like this is hard numbers to go by. It was just here's a rough example of what happens that as you get to certain pHs, you lose, the longevity of the pesticide product. And so what I like to tell people is like, don't take that chart as gospel, like those numbers, right? Yes, we do lose some longevity, but man, you'd have to let it sit in the tank for quite a while. And they've updated formulations on a lot of products and everything else. And we really shouldn't be letting pesticides sit in our spray tanks for multiple days on end as it is anyway, right?
Sure.
Like get it in there, go spray it within that day. You're not going to have any concerns on that front. Circling back to the weed control part, like I mentioned, you really got to get on the extreme side of things, like 9 or greater, right, of a starting water pH, or if you're adding in some of those pH buffers that spike it way up, we can see some effects. But generally speaking, our herbicides, the way they're formulated, they will move the spray solution pH where they need to go, right?
They're acids.
Generally speaking, most of them are acids. And so I like to use Roundup as an example. Roundup wants to be quite acidic, right, when you're spraying. And I've had some where we were at a pH of like 9 and we added Roundup to the tank and then we tested it again. It still dropped it down to a 5. Like it gets it where it needs to go, basically, right? So in general, pH, really I'm not super concerned about from the weed control standpoint. If we're talking about water, it's really the hardness factor, right? Which we go back to AMS and everything else. And so the calciums, the magnesiums, the irons of the world, that's what really affects from a spray water quality standpoint that affects weed control.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a really good thing that you're kind of a nice guy when you talk about all this stuff, because it could really just bring down the whole room. But look at that smile. Look at that smile from Tommy
Upbeat
Butts.
voice.
Upbeat, yeah. I mean, my goodness.
Well,
It's a great year for Waterhemp. It's a great year for giant ragweed.
You see, a lot of this is job security. For,
Who are you to talk?
Corn nitrogen.
yeah, we all have our job security.
Let's take a time out. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about some research that you guys are doing this year. I want to know what some of the things that you're working on and what farmers have to look forward to maybe at the end of this year and going forward. So we'll take a time out here on the Purdue Crop Chat. I want to thank our sponsors, the Indiana Corn Marketing Council and Indiana Soybean Alliance. The Crop Chat continues next.
I'm Matthew Chapman, and I farm in Henry County, Indiana. Indiana Soybean Alliance and Indiana Corn Marketing Council invest checkoff dollars into building demand for corn and soybeans internationally. I've seen this work firsthand, and it's been eye-opening to see the growth in these markets, which also brings dollars back to our farms. Promoting U.S. corn and soybeans and increasing global demand is critical to the success of farmers right here in Indiana.
This message is brought to you by the Indiana Soybean and Corn Checkoffs.
Every spring, planters hit the field setting the foundation for everything that follows. At Bain Welker Equipment, we're doing the same, building the future of our service team. If you've got mechanical skills, problem-solving grit, or hands-on experience, your talent shouldn't be stuck in neutral. Automotive, diesel, industrial, military, those skills transfer here. We're a proud Case IH dealer, keeping Case IH equipment running when farmers need it most. And that takes the best technicians in the business. Planting season is coming fast. The question is, are you ready for more or ready for the same? Better training, real advancement, a team that backs your growth. If you're ready to push further, earn more, and be part of something bigger, visit bainwelker.com/work with us. Apply today and level up your career. This podcast is brought to you by the Indiana Forestry and Woodland Owners Association, working for Indiana's woodlands. Across our state, forests are more than beautiful spaces. They're living assets. When responsibly managed, woodlands can become a valuable part of a diversified farming operation. Healthy forests can provide income, support wildlife habitat, improve soil and water quality, and create opportunities for generations. Well-managed woodlands offer real financial benefits that can rival incomes from row crops. The Indiana Forestry and Woodland Owners Association is here to help you make the most of your forest resources. Learn how good management today can benefit your family, your land, and Indiana's environment for years to come. Find out more at ifwoa.org.
We're back on the Purdue Crop Chat. Thanks for joining us. Eric Pfeiffer here, Dan Corn Quinn, Soybean Shaun Casteel, and Tommy Butts, the weeds guy. Weeds guy. And Tommy, during the break, amazingly enough, you were just begging me to hammer you about
solid.
glyphosate and dicamba.
I need to learn to shut my mouth.
Yes, you do. Let's talk about dicamba first. What's the latest? I'll let you go. I'm not going to hammer you. That's not my thing. Just what's the latest?
Yeah, so latest on dicamba. So it is back for this year. So we have over the top products in soybeans. There's 3. So Tavium from Syngenta, Ingenia from BASF, and then what I'll call the new one, which is Striax from Bayer, but it's just XtendiMax. They've just rebranded it, kind of thing. So Striax, Ingenia, and Tavium. Essentially, there's a whole lot of new rules with it. They've changed quite a bit of the different application practices, the different tank mix things. A lot of it is what I will say is less restrictive. Let's just say that they've gotten rid of a lot of the nozzle, requirements, a lot of the tank mix restrictions. Essentially, the main restrictions now are in the state. There's a June 12th hard physical cutoff for Indiana. And then there's some extra temperature cutoff things that people need to pay attention to. So if the forecasted temperature within 2 days is above 95, you can't spray it whatsoever. If it's forecast is 85 or above, you can only spray 50% of your acres in a county, right? So this gets real finicky and watching forecasts and taking a lot of temperature measurements and all of that. So that's where it does get more restrictive. And then also the buffer zone requirement is a fair amount more restrictive now on this too. So it is a 240-foot mandatory buffer that you have, a downwind buffer that you need to have. Neighboring agricultural fields don't count anymore. And so effectively it's almost like an infield buffer you have to have. You can implement some other strategies to try and cut that down, but it's just some more documentation and you got to do all that in advance so you know what you're doing, kind of thing. But so the buffer zone and those temperature things are probably the major extreme differences to me that are more restrictive, but then there's a whole lot of things that they opened up on the labels as well compared to what the old labels were.
So I do have to ask, because earlier we were talking about the different tools that farmers have. We hear this line all the time. It's another tool in the tool belt.
I may have said that a lot. So
I've been on a program or two. Here's the toolbox.
I mean, it's one of those that and then there are the guys. You've got like Batman and his tool belt. Like it's full, and then you can't build a thing. There's my tool belt.
I think Tommy's looking for the 10 millimeter still.
Yeah. I mean, So I get, is this a good thing for farmers? Because they're starting to run out of some tools.
Yeah. So, so I'm always a tool in the toolbox guy, right? Like I like people to have options. So from that standpoint, yes, like I'm glad that people, have a different option, that we have choices, right? I'm about choices too. I think that helps on the whole price front that we were just talking. If we all get hammered into one little zone, then all of a sudden prices can go up pretty significantly, right? So
Are there examples of that?
No, never. But so from that standpoint, yes, I think it's good to have tools in the toolbox. Now I will say, right, there's still, off-target concerns that are going to happen. We talk about resistance, right? Auxins generally go hand in hand. So just because now we have Dicamba, and if we've been having issues with 2,4-D, that doesn't mean Dicamba is going to work now, right? They kind of go hand in hand. And so that would be the main thing that I want to tell people is like, I wouldn't expect to go from the Enlist system to the Dicamba system and all of a sudden go from a 70% control to the 100% nothing survives, right? Scorched earth. Like that's just not what we're going to see. So maybe temper expectations a little bit is what I would be on it. But to me, yeah, the fact that we can have some more tools out there that guys can use, as long as we're using them appropriately, that's ideal. That kind of goes back to the 20-mile-an-hour wind thing for sure there, right? Let's not be doing that.
Yeah.
So that for something that is that highly, that there's a lot of things that are highly sensitive to that, we really got to manage that one close.
Yeah. Glyphosate. Go ahead, floor's yours.
We have it.
Barbecue. Yeah. I can say one word too.
Yeah. So glyphosate, there's not too much for updates on that one that I've heard as of recently, right? There is some ongoing litigation. It's made its way actually to the Supreme Court and things like that. I have not been following it super close, right? I'm just kind of waiting for final.
I think it was actually heard yesterday.
Was it really? Okay.
Yeah, we're going to have some news on it on Hoosier Ag today, so be sure to follow it there.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I haven't heard any. I'm waiting for the final decisions and things like that. So I haven't followed it super close on that. In the realm of things, what I like to tell everybody on that one, though, tool, even with all the resistance we have, still a massively vital tool across the board for grass control and other weed species and things like that. So we want to keep that tool, as much as possible in our toolbox. Again, since you like that so much, Eric, right? So keep that in our toolbox as well. And again, I just like to tell everybody, right? Just manage things as best as we can, right? Show that we are good stewards of everything we do in agriculture, because everybody does do it really well, a really good job. We just need to promote it, a lot better, and that we're using appropriate practices and we're not digging our heels in and saying, I'm not doing any of this, right? That we actually are showing how well we're doing with some of those stewardship practices. So that's what I'd say on that front. But I think that's where we're at on glyphosate. I think it's again, at this point, I don't see anything stopping it for this year. We'll see moving forward from there.
Yeah. But we really do need to come up with another saying. I just can't think of one. Like another pencil in our pencil bag, or our trapper keep. It just doesn't work. A tool in the tool belt.
Yeah, you need to go back and work on that one.
I know. I need more time. I need more time. We'll maybe AI can help me. You guys talk for the rest, and I'll just. Let's talk about research. Research, obviously, is what you guys do.
It is.
Yeah, there's like you should be anyway.
Still learning what our jobs are.
Big field out there. I think research is part of the title here in West Lafayette and all around the state, several others. Talk to me about some of your research projects. What are you hoping to learn this year? I know that there are some that continue from last year, maybe some new ones. What you got, Dan?
Yeah, unique about our programs, and I think probably for all of us sitting here, is that we have pretty diverse programs. So we're not just isolated to one or two projects that we're working on. We usually have a pretty wide range of projects across a lot of diverse topics, diverse products, diverse management practices. So I think that's kind of always a fun part of my job, is that I get to look at so many different things. Some of the unique things, that we're always, short corn is always going to be at, the forefront of what we've been doing over the last few years. We've got some newer hybrids from Bayer that I think, showed a little bit of promise in terms of the yield that some of the previous ones didn't. So I'm really curious. Like, we just had a little bit to play around last year, and then now this year we have kind of a full force of really diving at looking at some of those hybrids. So, really looking at how those genetics do in the short stature corn versus what we had in the past. And, we're overlaying a lot more intense type trials, looking at, irrigation and water use in short corn and continuing some of our nutrient work and intensive management and stuff like that. A couple other, interesting trials that we really started last. We're looking at nutrient interactions. So looking at nitrogen and sulfur combined. We do a lot of rate work and we do a lot of sulfur work, but actually kind of combining those two and really understanding how those two nutrients interact with one another and seeing some really interesting pieces. And what's unique about that project is that it's actually we have a couple sites in Indiana, but I think we're doing it across anywhere from 15 to 18 other states. So Brian Arnall is at Oklahoma State is actually leading this project. So it's actually a pretty almost national undertaking of a trial. So I think, it'd be really interesting not to look at our results, but actually look at when they're combined. I think, they're going all the way from Minnesota down to Alabama and west with these trials. So it'd be unique when that data set comes apart. And then another side, we're actually looking at nitrogen by potassium too. But just, understanding how, if you're deficient in one of these nutrients or sufficient in how they interact with one another, if I'm lacking in sulfur, and we've seen this in some of our initial data, like if we're lacking in sulfur, our nitrogen uptake in the plants is reduced. But on the flip side, if I have too much nitrogen, we see this in nitrogen to sulfur ratios. If I have too much nitrogen, we actually see that sulfur uptake is suppressed in the plant. So trying to understand that a lot more and okay, is there a certain ratio we need to maintain, or is there, something we need to look at on that front? So we'll do that for the next couple of years. And like I said, we're, putting it together with quite a few other states. So I think it'll be a really nice story when it comes together. And nitrogen by potassium, we're doing this with the University of Illinois as well with this trial, and it's kind of the same type of thing. We have a couple sites up in Northwest Indiana that are really low in potassium, and then sufficient sites with potassium. So really seeing that if you're short in potassium, it doesn't matter how much nitrogen you put out there, that corn is just still not going to yield. Your optimum rate's still going to be low. You're just wasting money at that point in time with your nitrogen fertilizer if your potassium is deficient. So I think, those are a couple of the big kind of, unique projects that we've started, and also a multi-state aspect of it too, that I'm really intrigued by too.
We've talked about the short corn before and plenty, but I think I've asked this before. How far away are we from short corn being more, I'll say, the norm?
I still think, like, in terms of like the norm, the way I don't have a crystal ball, the way I kind of envision it, and just conversations, I've had the opportunity to have conversations with a lot of the companies and a lot of the head breeders at these places. I think corn's going to be inherently shorter, period. Now, is it going to be the level of the short stature hybrids that we've been working with? But I think, as breeding evolves, right, I do think a lot of the plants are just going to become a little bit more inherently shorter anyway. So I think that's going to be part of it. I do think, we've been still kind of working with the hybrids that have been, conventionally bred over time. Some of these companies have been working on these for 10, 15 years. It's not something that's new in the breeding platform. But there is the genetically modified versions that are still coming, hopefully in the next couple of years. So I kind of envision like that. Those genetically modified short stature hybrids seems a little bit more stable in terms of ear placement and internode spacing. So I kind of envision like that is the realm that'll kind of maybe take hold in probably the next 3, 4, 5 years as well. But it just kind of seems like, the trends and the breeding and stuff like that, just from what I've seen, right? And I don't always get the answers on a lot of that front, but it seems like, what I've been told is it's kind of like a breeding reset a little bit. Maybe they're hitting the peak on some of those taller hybrids. Okay, maybe we can reset it with the shorter hybrid and then start building on that. So I think a lot of hybrids might be just inherently shorter more as we move in the future. And I do think these I've seen it in our trials from the first short stature hybrids we worked with that, were rough in some cases to where we're at now. I think they're going to evolve as we move in the future. But, probably still, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Yeah.
Speaking of corn wanting to look more like soybeans, I can't believe we've gone this entire podcast and not mentioned the fact that Dan and Shaun are just absolutely adorable. They're just the cutest things.
I thought we were just going to let it slide and see if the audience kind of recognized it. So
they clearly got together this morning and are like, "Hey, are you wearing this shirt? Because I want to wear it, and maybe we should be twinsies."
I think they share a closet, I think is what they do.
You think that's what it is?
Yeah, I think they just go to the office and Lily and pick it out together. Yeah.
Because they are wearing, for those not watching and those listening, they are wearing the same exact shirt.
And just Shaun and I, you appreciate free stuff. You know? Free
We're
shirts
extension for free stuff and food.
free pullovers, you know.
So I can't believe we went the entire time and just now mentioned it. I think that Shaun is now also thinking about getting a few inches taken off so that he can also be shorter to look like you.
Maybe.
But anyway, Shaun, research some things that you're considering.
Sure. So as we wrap up the last few years and go into the next year, so we've sunsetted some of our trials over the years with the biologicals. We've looked at those for a lot of years, 3+ years. And so kind of putting a bow on some of those studies and really not having here's the one that's going to work out. And so I talked about economics before. It's like, save our money on a lot of this. There's still new biologicals that are always out there being promoted. And so we've got some of those that are in the pipeline, looking at some of those. And so in terms of systems, that's it's a nice way to say you're not doing it right, Tommy. It's like we did these one and dones, and then I can get that. Is that sometimes we do just like, here's a one and done, and how does that work? And that's not part of a system. So we're looking at some systems as well to say, okay, if it is a system, if it is something that we need to feed that microbe, whether that's something that we applied to a seed or in furrow or what's already in the ground, we've got some of that stuff going on this year. So whether that's a source that's not just sugar, but a carbon source. So that idea, okay, let's see if there's any validity to that. So we got some of those trials going on this year. Planting dates are always one that we've pushed for years. And clearly, we talked about this season, we're 35% in the state level. One aspect of that is, how to get across a lot of acres. A lot of guys said, I'm going to go a 30-inch planter. This part of the world, there's a lot more of those. And last year was an interesting kind of a side study down in the southeast. It's like those soils just tend to be wet, and just try to get a planting date study in hard. And then they're like, well, what if we do a planting date study? What if we do it with starter? And so looking at starters in a different way on soybeans, it's nothing new, but it's new in terms of we're pushing planting dates more than we did 20, 30 years ago when they did starter work. And so now it's like, okay, if we're pushing those planting dates earlier, cooler soils typically, not this year, maybe now. So we've got across the state what I call my 30-15 study. So it's a planting date by 30-15. So we're doing 30s and 15s with early planting dates with some later ones. With 30s with the mindset, okay, those are going to be the planters typically that have the bells and whistles with starters, with in furrows. Not as many pop-up or in furrows on 15. So it's like, okay, if we go Cadillac on a planter on 30s, and we do this kind of technology and liquid delivery, whether it's nutrients or whether it's, biologicals or something else, how does that perform versus just doing business as usual, planting my 15s that I know normally close the row 25 days faster, so I help out with weed control. So having that head-to-head competition across the state, that's a fun new one that's going on. Some other ones we're looking into. There's been a lot of promotion on singulation and uniformity in the last few years from some high yield guys. And so we need uniformity, you need singularity. And so we're looking at that in some different ways from our planting equipment, both in disc. There's some fun outfits that kind of a local kind of up in the Northeast that have bundling the plants together in the way they seed, almost like check planting, but in a modern twist, then to cut rates. And so then it's like, how does that work versus, okay, we have to have the singulation every 3 inches and the uniform emergence. So we're looking at some of that as well. So that's been kind of fun to get that one off the ground. Otherwise, still looking at systems of, okay, rotation effects between the two crops, cover crops. So that's kind of taking a lot of our time. Sulfur works. Yep, the residual effects of sulfur from the previous crop of corn to soybeans, as well as timing doing fall applications that actually look pretty good. On the soybean front, they look pretty good. We're going into what I call the more coarse texture ground and doing fall applications, which typically I'd say don't do because we're going to leach so much of it. Whereas our heavier ground, it can hold on to a little bit longer. So that's some nice new learnings that so far they can hold on longer. Now let's look at those more coarse textured soils as well.
Yeah. And it's worth mentioning that, you know, the sponsors of our show, the Indiana Corn Marketing Council and Indiana Soybean Alliance, they do fund a lot of your research. You know, it kind of makes sense. Corn and soybeans.
Yeah, well, and the 3015 planting date today, I mean, that's one that they're hitting directly and supporting. Dan talked about some national protocols. And so our group is also a national soybean group looking at potassium. And so we're looking at potassium in a different way. Mm-hmm. So we just got it planted last Friday and looking at in furrows with some potassium products versus some just, okay, here's double at 60. And I get a lot of questions on potassium acetate during vegetative or reproductive stages. So we're looking at that one. So I'm kind of excited to see how that one plays out. In particular, the foliar sprays, a lot of people talk about helping with seed fill. And so we can think about it physiologically that potassium helps with stomatal conductance, so basically water regulation. So it's kind of interesting to see if there's anything to that.
Yeah, and I do want to say, too, like Shaun mentioned, you know, their multi-state soybean group and the Science for Success. And this year is actually the first year that we're going to have a multi-state corn research project. So actually looking at some of the in-furrow biologicals, I think across 10 states. So I think that's, you know, pretty cool to, you know, it's the first year that we're actually doing this. We have a younger faculty member at University of Tennessee that's leading it. So I think it's be great, you know, to see where this group goes. We're kind of, you know, learning what we can from the soybean group and learning what they've done. We actually had conversations with their team that led their multi-state biological. So we kind of set it up in similar fashion in how we approached it. So yeah, it'll be the first year that we have a multi-state corn group trial.
Very good. I'll say one more thing, the fun new thing and frustrating thing. A group of us got together, so Dan, myself, Ignacio, Megan, we put monies together and built out a new planter. So to kind of do medium to field scale work with all the bells and whistles, and quite literally all the bells and whistles were going off when I was in the field, you know, on Monday. I was like, Dan, what is going on? So having that struggle and frustration as well as the fun that comes with that. So from active down pressures to the liquids to the furrows. And so that's definitely an area that we're getting into. I think about residue control in particular on the soybean front.
Yeah. The old drill and marker arms were looking pretty good yesterday, weren't they?
They were. Just that semi-controlled spill. Yeah. I can just go, drop it and go. There's some seed on top of the ground. That drill is set just right.
That's right.
As we close out today's Purdue Crop Chat, just some final thoughts, words of advice here. Tommy, we'll start with you. Again, we've got a very stark difference between the southern part of the state, the northern part of the state. Words of advice for those folks and everyone in between.
I think in general, the one thing I want to throw out there yet that we really didn't talk about today, right? We focused a lot on herbicides and the easy solution coming out of a jug. And you all mentioned, you know, a lot of the research projects are systems approach, and that's what we're trying to do a lot of anymore too. And so I think that's the recommendation is there is no one answer, right? And then it's no one coming out of a jug answer anymore. And so the more we can implement other strategies with our weeds, the better off we'll be. So whether it's going to more narrow rows, whether it's integrating cover crops, whether it's doing, you know, tank mixes, residuals, you know, anything else that we can do just to combat those things, we got to start doing it. And now it's tough when we're already partway into the season this year, but it's never too early to start making plans for next year and the fall and everything else. And so that's kind of the thing I would throw out there is, you know, we talked about what to do right now, you know, earlier on, but now moving forward and long term from weed science kind of thing, it's trying to integrate all these other strategies if we ever really want to get ahead of some of these things.
Shaun, advice as we go forward here?
Well, I think about what's in the ground now and what's to come. So to go ahead and make sure we do scout and say, you know, just because we got it in the ground doesn't mean it's going to come up. I was scouting some of the earlier stuff we planted last Friday, and, you know, we got the rain now, but it was crusting pretty good. And so I think there was going to be some emergence issues with what's been put in. I also look to now we're probably going to get a little trigger happy, is my guess, including myself. Is like, okay, I've been able to run pretty wide open. I was like, okay, we've had 3 days of sunshine, but it hasn't dried out yet. So to be patient as the field conditions come to the better condition to actually plant in.
Dan?
Yeah, pretty similar on the corn front. I think, checking stands with the stuff coming in, be interesting to see, what, there's going to be some pockets that had flooding and had some issues. I do think we'll probably put some of the seed treatments to test. When you think about saturated soils, temps now getting in the 50s, you think about, soil-borne diseases and stuff like that. So be on the lookout for that kind of stuff. We talk about, just checking stands, looking at your population and on corn, but also looking at just the quality of the stand. Just because the corn's up doesn't mean, is it uniform? How does it look? Big thing this time of year as corn starts, as it's really young, I would say, 9 out of 10 problems are below the ground with the root system. So dig some plants up. Take a look at that root system. Is it healthy or is it having problems? So yeah, it's a great time to really assess what's coming up and the quality of it. And then, yeah, I think the other point too is that it's still April 28th, right? So we still have, plenty of time, right? The weather can change on a dime. It could change on a dime, be way worse, or it could get, a lot better. But I do think, like Shaun said, getting a little trigger happy where you look at it and go, well, you're talking to folks in Southern Indiana and they're saying, well, I'm done. And, you hear that, psychologically,
Fear of missing out.
Got to catch up. Got to catch up.
Yeah. Fear of missing out. That's what
FOMO.
That's what the kids say.
The kids say, look at this old man over here.
I'm down with the lingo.
We'll let that go.
No, but I think, there's a lot of crop in the ground, so it's a great time to start looking in as it comes out of the ground and seeing how it looks. Yeah.
Tommy, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And, let's try to add some more tools to the tool belt or some more strings to your bow.
Yeah, well, there you go, I guess.
He
totally Googled this, or AI did.
Yeah,
you catch this? I saw him typing earlier.
Maybe an extra arrow in the quiver.
Yeah. Nah, these are going downhill.
A new play in the playbook.
Maybe. Well, that goes along. You do a lot of the video.
Yeah, a lot of the sports stuff. I still like my hammer, and that I like, the screwdriver and 10 millimeter.
The crescent wrench, that's a hammer too?
Yeah. Well,
diversifying your technical competencies? That's if you're writing a resume. Sorry.
Yeah. Just don't become a tool is the main thing.
Don't become a tool.
Put the AI away.
We're done. Hey, thanks for joining us on the Purdue Crop Chat, and we will do this again here in another couple weeks, and who knows, we might be we're halfway done. We might be
the same spot.
35% planted.
We might still be in the same spot. We'll find out, but we'll do it again here in a couple weeks. I don't have much advice to give other than stay safe out there. Please do stay safe out there, and hopefully we will wrap up planting here in a safe manner, and we will get things uniform and everything else. Let's hope for that. Thanks for joining us on the Purdue Crop Chat, and thanks again to our sponsors, the Indiana Corn Marketing Council and Indiana Soybean Alliance. Enjoy your day. Until next time, be safe and be well.
This has been Purdue Crop Chat, a regular series featuring Purdue Extension's Dr. Dan Quinn and Dr. Shaun Casteel, made possible by the Indiana Corn and Soybean Checkoffs, the Indiana Corn Marketing Council, and the Indiana Soybean Alliance. The Checkoffs are pleased to help bring you agronomy insights from Purdue Extension. Opinions on the podcast are those of the host and guests and not those of the sponsor. Purdue Crop Chat is a service of Purdue University Extension and Hoosier Ag Today. Timely, relevant, credible.